Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! Indy Wide!
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday, Transfer Tuesday, I guess we'll call it. How's that? Lots going on in the portal, in, out, draft, women's draft, Mackenzie Holmes to Seattle. Indiana boys basketball all-star rosters are named. All kinds of things coming up. UK's roster depleting. Mercy. Let's see, the Indiana Elite 3 SSB team 4-0 over the weekend. 6 former Hoosiers heading to NBA postseason play. Miller Kopp, G League champion. Omar Ballo on his visit right now on the heels of a commitment from Miles Rice. Connor Hickman goes to Cincinnati. Tony Perkins to Missouri. It's like a chess game to keep up with here. How's everybody doing? Hope you're having a great one. Appreciate you being with us. Wherever you're listening. Either our friends on 97.7 The Ref ESPN down in Evansville, 1380 The Fan, the only sports station in Fort Wayne Sports Station, and the voice of the region, WJLB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, and, of course, our audience on YouTube. Appreciate you guys hitting us up early and often on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda, and Boost Fundraising. If you know a group needing a fundraiser, Boost Fundraising offers the most unique and easy online fundraising in the nation, raising more money faster. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member, free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all, whether it's sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, community groups. Boost Fundraising raises more money, easier and faster. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to use the promo code COIL to receive a discounted fundraiser. So, man, it's like I said chess, more like checkers. It goes a little bit faster in this portal, but action happening. Connor Hickman not going to wait and did not want to, after the commitment of Miles Rice, I assume thought that if this is about starting and not starting it, which I did see, that doesn't mean it's true, but why as much minutes as people play and as you should be playing, there should be enough minutes to go around, but hey, everybody's got to find them a spot. And that's what is happening now, man. It is, I call it Transfer Portal USA. But, yeah, it is a busy time. Umar Ballo on his visit. I think he's still on his visit at Indiana. The big man seemed he seemed very excited to be in Bloomington from all of the things I saw on social media. Tons and tons of postings.
Did you know as of yesterday he was the #1 player in the portal according to ESPN?
I did. And that doesn't amaze me, but for someone whose numbers weren't gigantic, it's a little surprising, but it's what I guess what he can bring to the table with a solid outing the concern, it's not really well, maybe it is a concern. The concern for some Hoosier fans is, what kind of offense are you going to see Indiana run again? Is it going to be another 3 out, 2 in instead of the 4 out, 1 in with Malik Renew running at the 4? And in essence, having 2 big guys, 2 bigs. So, well, we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be however it's going to be. Boogie Fland, his recruitment is reopened, of course. Indiana went down to the wire along with Alabama as he decided to go to Kentucky, but now he has asked for his release. Then there are other, let's see, how many players, John, from Kentucky have they've hit the portal. DJ Wagner is in the portal, and he is a former number 1 ranked recruit in the country, I believe. Bradshaw, he is already headed to Ohio State, so Indiana fans will see him in the Big Ten. Does Indiana get back involved, the Boogie Fland? Does the Miles Rice signing do anything there? There's a lot going on, man. A lot going on. It's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of facets to the story for you big Lebowski fans. I know John doesn't get that one.
I have heard you reference the Big Lebowski, but I still haven't seen it before.
That's a shame.
It is a shame. I'll take that.
A shame. But man, yeah, it's like a scorecard. It's like right now, the transfer portal is like being a play-by-play announcer. Rice comes off for the left side. He signs with Indiana. Now you've got Tony Perkins coming up the other side. Connor Hickman going to Cincinnati. Tony Perkins to Missouri. It's just boom, boom, boom. And those are 2 actuals. Tony Perkins, he's headed to Missouri. Connor Hickman to Cincinnati. They're finding their homes. So who ends up where? And then, of course, we've got the Indiana football spring game coming up in just 2 days. So just a little bit going on. A little bit to keep track of. Looking forward to Mike DeCourcy joining us here on the program today from Sporting News and Big Ten Network, and to talk about all this transfer craziness. It's the portal it's something. It is definitely it's hopping, people. It is hopping. I mentioned the 3SSB League, the Adidas AAU League, and Indiana Elite having a good weekend. They go 4-0, and great 3-point shooting by Trent Sisley. I think he was 6 of 8 on the weekend, 67%. I thought I'm forgetting his numbers exactly, but averaged about 13 points a game. Desmond Briscoe. I'm trying to do all these numbers in my head by memory. Braylon Mullins. He had a high of 29 points, averaging 20 points over the weekend. So a good weekend for him, but a good weekend for Indiana Elite, period, as they go undefeated. Other than that, not much going on. But yeah, just kidding. It's a ton. What does Indiana get in? Because I'll be honest with you, I was been a little concerned of, well, not me, but if I were a fan, I would wonder about the 3-point shooting of Miles Rice, but he's not being brought in as a 3-point shooter. He's being brought in as a point guard. So, and that is their guy. Plus, he's young. He's got years, but that means Indiana's going to have to recruit him again next year. Possibly. Possibly not. We shall see. He's a 6'3". He's comes from Georgia. So, He redshirted his first season of college basketball. He also had a form of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 22 and 23. So he dealt with that. So that's something to keep in mind that he had to deal with. He returned to the court last year or a year later, and that breakout came appearing. He started in 35 games for Washington State in the final season of the Pac-12 play. So that makes him the final Pac-12 freshman of the year, which is what he earned. He scored right at 15 points a game, grabbing over 3 rebounds a game, and nearly 4 assists per game. He did shoot 44% from the field, 51% from 2, and the 3-point shooting, not great at 27.5%, but 81% at the line. So he's not going to be your main 3-point shooter, but that's not to say that doesn't pick up and get better. He's going to be a good pickup for Indiana. Looking over to Andy Moore Honda Hotline. Larry out Las Vegas. Larry jumping on. Heath is down in Danville. Fred, Bob down in Georgetown. Brian. He says he's got to say he was surprised by the crowd at Gamebridge just to see Clark get drafted. Clark Mania. Yeah. Forgot to even mention that. Of course, going to Indiana. The Fever as the number 1 pick. Russell asking, does Belmont do football or wrestling? I'm not sure what that's about. Jason jumping on from Belmont Elementary. Shout out to all the peeps at Belmont Elementary, though. Mike Shenanigans, Southern Wabash County. Buffalo Bill Evans, appreciate you. As always. Kevin, Donald. Man, it's full. Tony from Eldersburg, Maryland. Appreciate having you on, man. Jamie. Long line today. David, Dagonia. Dagonia David. That's an easy nickname. They're pointing out the visit for Valo ends today. So a lot of stuff out on social media about it. We'll see how that turns out. But it seemed, I think Indiana is making their desire for him known. I even saw a picture that, when they're doing the photo shoot and the jerseys and all of that, Gabe Cups jumped in. That's something you don't see a lot of. So there's that. We've got to take a break. Lots more coming up and lots more to talk about. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News will join us to do that up next, and we'll also get to Chronic Hoosier a little later as well, and whatever else we can scare up. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Fresh Fork. Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle of the Fresh Fork chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep, proudly fueling IU athletes now and available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse. From hearty proteins to fresh salads, the Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Order online and let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use radio code 20 for $20 off your first order. So lots to get to. Back with all that and more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Did Sarah Scalia not get drafted? Not that anyone was keeping up with, like, if you saw all of it, but I just see people tweeting about it or about her in general.
I don't know. I don't think she did. But how many rounds are there?
I have no idea. They have a small number of teams, so maybe I'm assuming there wouldn't be too many. Yeah, she went undrafted. Was she out of eligibility? Did she have to go to the draft?
Yeah, she was done.
Okay. You're going to say, I hate that. If she went to the draft just to not get drafted, if she could have come back.
No, yeah, that wouldn't have happened.
Heck, I should have been looking at the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Everybody else is responding to my questions. I didn't have to look it up myself. Appreciate you all. Sometimes I forget you're there whenever I'm looking at other things. Good morning, Mike.
Oh, wow. You can see my moving boxes.
I would have never even noticed it. Have you? Look at the stuff that's behind all the crap behind me. Are you kidding me?
Oh, man.
Oh, I'm sitting there trying to keep up with the scorecard that is the transfer portal.
Oh, wow.
All right, here we go, guys. 10 seconds.
Perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, brought to you by Chop Shop Market and Table. Don't forget, home of the Indiana men's, women's basketball shows, in addition to the football show. You can stop by Chop Shop Market and Table. Your butcher baker, no matter where you live, sit down dining, or you can get some great meats to go, like Wagyu steaks that are sourced from right around here. Joining us now, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. And Mike, I've been trying to keep up on the scorecard of the transfer portal everywhere. Tony Perkins, who an Indiana guy, ending up at Missouri. You've got Connor Hickman at Cincinnati. Indiana picks up Miles Rice. It's like, what? Who's going where? You didn't enter the portal, did you?
I actually, technically, I guess I did. I transferred from Fishers, Indiana to Butler County, Pennsylvania. So I think I am. I think I did. Yes. But unfortunately, I didn't get any NIL out of it.
Man, that's the whole deal, man, right there. It's a seller's market right now too.
Oh my goodness. It is, it's interesting to me how many times I come across on Twitter that this is ruining college basketball. When coaches have been doing this for decades, for many, many multiples more than the players are doing. Look, I think one of the things that teams are failing miserably at is retention, because you can pay your guy to stay just as easily as someone else can pay them to move. And there's two things. One, a lot of the players that are moving are not considered to be entirely desirable by their programs. That's one option. And the second option is the program in question is doing a horrible job of valuing the player relative to the open market. Or I guess there's a third. One is they're doing a horrible job of generating the necessary NIL funds to make their program what it could be. Those are the three options. And I don't like immediate eligibility for the multiple time transfer, but there's nothing you can do about it because of what the courts have done. And again, this all goes back to the failed reign of Mark Emmert and what happened during his time as president of the NCAA, and how many times the NCAA had an opportunity to say, we got to get ahead of this. Let's make a plan. Let's plan for these various contingencies. Let's make sure we're ahead of it so that A, we can continue to do business in a reasonably functional process. And two, I like that. And two, we can deliver the best possible experience for the student athlete. They didn't do any of that. And I still go back to ground zero of this, which is, well, I shouldn't use that terminology, but I should go back to the very beginning of this, which is the O'Bannon suit is certified for trial, whatever verbiage they use in court system. They're going to trial. The attorneys representing the O'Bannon class approach the NCAA and say, look, we want to settle this. And they not only wanted the money, which they would have gotten some money, but also they wanted to try to work on for the future past athletes, some sort of compensation through video games and all that sort of stuff. And also for the current athletes, some sort of apparatus that worked better than what they were doing and that would work in the future when things started to change. And the NCAA, not only did they say no, Jim, they said no to the meeting. They never even heard what the O'Bannon class had to say about what they thought the future might look like. They had no interest. They thought they were going to win, and they got trounced again. And then in the Alston case, which was about educational expenses over and above room, board, tuition, books, and fees, and then cost of attendance, they fought against that. It was the worst administration in the history of, I mean, that's a good question for you. That'd be a great Twitter poll. Worst administration, the Emmert administration of the NCAA or the Larry Scott administration of the Pac-12. One of those two. There's your two choices. Which one are you voting for?
Well, I'd go with Mark Emmert immediately just because of the ramifications, the larger ramifications affecting all of sports. Yes. Although they're probably not far off if you wanted to.
Probably not, because one of them doesn't exist any longer.
True, exactly.
Well, yeah. Technically it exists, but it doesn't exist in any practical form.
No, and one of the the players that Indiana has picked up, Rice, he becomes the last Pac-12 freshman of the year. So I guess he can put that on his wall. I was the final Pac-12 freshman of the year. But it's a shame because of losing that tradition, because it matters. It matters. I don't live out on the West Coast, but it matters to those people. It matters to that area of the country. And it's like losing it's just something going away that there's no reason for it to have gone away. But will the NCAA go away at some time and turn into something else?
I can't say that it won't. I still think that NCAA has great utility. And I think one of the NCAA's problems in this regard, Jim, is that people don't understand what they are or what they do. They look at the NCAA as cops first, so to speak, a police force, an investigative force. That's not first for them. It's not, it's way down. It's in there, but it's not far. The first and foremost thing the NCAA does is run championships. That's what they do, and it's what they do best. It's the number one thing on their list because it's the number one generator of revenue via primarily the men's basketball tournament, but now increasingly the women's basketball tournament and other championships that ESPN pays for to televise. It has become the number one thing they do, and people don't look at that. They think anybody can do it, and they think anybody can do it well. And anytime anything goes wrong, people act like the people at the NCAA don't know what they're doing. Well, look how few hiccups there are in a 67-team men's basketball tournament. Or look at even relatively how few hiccups there are in the women's basketball tournament. Even though there are lots of complaints, and certainly the episode of 2021 was not the best circumstance. They failed there on the women's tournament. But that was an unusual circumstance. They had to create everything on the fly, and what they failed to do was go across the hall and say, "What are you doing for the men?" "Okay, we'll do that." So we're all even. That's what they should have done. Or they should all been in the same room planning out the tournaments at the same time so that they did them equivalently. But in any case, they for the most part, they do a fabulous job. Why do you think the Women's College World Series is what it is now? The College World Series in Omaha, the soccer college cups, all of those events are what they are because the people at the NCAA really know how to do it. David Warlock, Dan Gavitt, so many terrific people that work at the NCAA, and everybody overlooks that because they haven't ever really been a great police force. Frankly, that's the least of my concerns relative to college athletics.
Yeah, it's just become a whole different ball of wax. I mean, it's this part of the year. It's not even really. It's not recruiting. It's more. I don't even know what the proper term to put on it. Recruiting is, well, it is recruiting, but it's more of who can sell. You've always been selling your university or selling your program, but now when it comes down to it, there's no way that the money does not speak louder than a lot of those other things.
I saw a tweet from, I can't even remember, one of the basketball accounts I follow who doesn't have a name, so I don't know who's behind it, but talked about what an official visit is like now. The athlete doesn't visit the campus and see all the, meet the fraternities or meet people in the academic element and all that sort of stuff. Well, I mean, frankly, whose fault is that, Jim? Is that the school's fault? The school is responding to what the request is. What do you want to see? I want to see how much money you're going to give me. Okay, that's what we'll tell you. Do you want to see the business building? I'm not so worried about that. Well, whose fault is that? And the other element of the tweet was sometimes the student isn't even involved. It's all agent. And whose fault is that? That is not the school's fault. That is the family's fault that they have made it into that. And if that's what they wanted to, and maybe fault isn't the right word, that's the family's decision. That's what they want, then fine. If that's what you want to get out of college athletics, then fine. That's if you want to get primarily to get paid because this is the one chance you'll have to make a lot of money playing basketball. Because let's be honest, there are players that you have mentioned in this show, so I'm not going to, but there are players that you have mentioned in this show that will, when they finish, will play professionally, but not for a lot of money. Maybe not for a whole lot more than they would make, at least initially, not for a whole lot more than they'd make if they went and used their college degree on, I don't know, becoming a junior trainee at some business or something. But they'll play because it's more fun than going and becoming a junior trainee in some business. So I don't blame athletes at this stage for using the leverage that they have to make more money when they'll probably never make this money again. I would blame them for wasting the money that they make, because if you're going to do this when you're a college student and get yourself ahead of the game, put it in a 401k or an IRA or an investment account and live off it, have it supplement your income for the rest of your life or for when you retire. That I would say you better be doing. If you're making 600, what's the young man from Miami? What do you make? 800 grand when he transferred to Kansas
Nigel
State?
Pack.
Yeah, from Indy. If Nigel Pack doesn't put that money away or most of it and use it wisely, then that's on him. And that's a foolish decision. But if you are doing that to get ahead of the game, so that when you leave college, that you're ahead in ways that most college students are behind, because rather than having that much money in the bank, they might owe a big, some portion of that money. I think that's great. I can't not think that's great. I don't know why so many people are bothered by it.
What is the I was getting ready to pull it up to look, because I know that like it was with Zach Edey from Canada, there are certain loopholes that they have to find to get the NIL money that they have to go through.
Yeah. When you're an international student, you're not allowed to work technically while you're an international student. I wrote a piece about this last year with a young man from San Diego State during when they were on their way into the Elite Eight. I wrote about his experience as an intern, and he was fairly well compensated as an intern, but he couldn't make nearly as much money as the point guard who could do, let's say, a commercial for a Subway shop or for a sandwich shop or something like that. He could do the center for that team could not do that because he was an international student. Zach Edey talked about that at the Final Four when he was presented one of his Player of the Year trophies, that he thinks that's a restriction that's probably unfair and probably ought to be loosened. I don't see any reason why a college student shouldn't be allowed to work to supplement their income, or to help pay for their education, I should say, while they're here.
No, because if you were a medical student, you're probably allowed to work at the Subway or whatever you said.
Well, no, you're not. That's the whole point.
Really?
No, I mean that's
totally ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what restricts them, is that they're not allowed to be employed while they're an international student. They're allowed to do internships. That's why this was arranged, so that this young man's internship was both legitimately an internship from which he could learn about his major. He's a business major, and his internship was with some sort of property management company or real estate development company, something like that. And so he learned a lot about the business, but he also was a very well-paid intern. When I was an intern at a radio station, I didn't make anything. And when I was an intern at a newspaper, the summer before my senior year, I made minimum wage. So he was much better compensated than that. And that, like I said, I mean, I'm all for that. But the way that Oscar Tshiebwe had to get his NIL was for Kentucky to do a tour to the Bahamas, play some games down there, and he was able to do some things there to make money, because the NCAA can't prevent him from it, but the federal government can. And the same thing with Zach. When they went to Canada to play Alabama in Toronto, that was a way for Zach to help generate some NIL income when he was up there. So I think he probably did some things as well, although I don't know this. I've never verified this, but I'd be surprised if he didn't do some things when he was with the Canada national team. He spent most of last summer with the Canada national team preparing for the World Cup. And he played for the World Cup team. He just didn't play a lot. But he was with them. And so I would imagine he did some things then as well, because he's not on U.S. soil, and he is, by NCAA rules, eligible to make that sort of income.
And so now you've got Indiana, who is chasing Umar Ballo, a Malian native, but Indiana is going to be playing in the Bahamas coming up next year. So voila, is that the answer for Indiana if they're looking to land Ballo?
I would say that's probably an advantage they can offer. I think the rules on international trips are still the same, that you can do one once every 3 years or something like that. I believe it. I don't think that rule has changed. And so there would be some schools that wouldn't be eligible for that. And so I would imagine that doesn't, let me say this. I don't think it hurts Indiana that they can offer that, that they can say, hey, we're going to the Bahamas or whatever. We might be able to work some arrangements. I got to figure that's helping Indiana. That may be, I don't know for sure, but that may even be why, he's choosing to leave Arizona, because he has been a regular player there. on good teams, very successful teams not as successful in the NCAAs, but very successful there. It's not like he's looking for PT. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has been a full-time starter the last, 3 years or 2 years. He has been, he was a part-time starter early in his career and a full-time. Now I'm losing track of whether this is a COVID year for him or his regular senior year, but either way, he has never lacked for PT. He gets a ton. So I'm sure he's looking for something more.
Yeah, one would imagine. We've got Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us, and we've got lots more coming up. Brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore and Remax Realty. For those in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl and her 2 decades of experience. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. We're back with more Mike DeCourcy right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for...
Hey, real quick, Jim, I didn't want to interrupt during this segment, but when you say the Bahamas trip, are you referring to their Battle for Atlantis conference? Okay, because I think, Mike, you were talking about like those.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't understand that. My bad.
No, you're good. I honestly didn't know. That's why I didn't interrupt.
You should have interrupted me and told me I was full of crap.
So that Indiana does have a crystal ball for him, which doesn't mean everything, but
they have one for someone else too. Who is it? Kane and Carlisle.
Yeah, I've seen that bouncing a lot.
So if you get both of those, how many spots does it leave open? 3 at that point?
Yeah. Which is still that now you have 3 spots you have to fill at positions where you already will have, quote unquote, your starters considered.
Yeah, at that point, you're selling role-playing minutes likely to players who are going to want to jump up from the mid-major level would be my guess.
But hopefully Indiana has learned they need those types because there's something called injuries that happen to people.
Well, that was the problem last year. You left a scholarship open, and then you had Ja'Kai Newton get hurt. So technically you were playing without 2 scholarships, even though one of them was still on your roster. You just couldn't play. So, yeah, that'll be as long as they can fill every spot, that's kind of one sign that Woodson needs to, or not really a sign, but one thing Woodson needs to make up for from last year.
Mike, what's your TV vice?
My TV vice?
Mine is American Idol.
Days of Our Lives.
I was going to laugh at myself, but I'll laugh at yours better.
You can laugh at mine. My wife and I started watching it during the pandemic.
But the funny thing is, I can see how those dang shows are, I don't want to say addictive, but it's constantly an ongoing story, at least.
Yep.
Yeah,
we laugh at it at times.
Well, I mean, I would imagine a lot of people are laughing at me for American Idol because it's not. I've been watching it since I still watch Saturday Night Live every week.
10 seconds, guys. Here we go.
Okay.
36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by the Autograph app. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you very much. Brought to you by the Autograph app. Make sure you go straight to the Autograph app. Download that, where Unreal Fandom gets Unreal Rewards. First to track and reward fans for loving what they love most, turning passion into access and experiences. Download the Autograph app today in either Apple or Google Play. Make sure you use the link link.ag.fan/ISB media. And you'll find all your content if you're looking for Indiana content, all right there. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us, and plenty to talk about. But first, I want to jump way off course and put Mike on the spot. What's your in the break? I asked what your TV vice was, and I gave mine. Mine is American Idol. I still watch that show, and it's 10 times better than The Voice, although it does not get better ratings for some reason. But American Idol is like 10-1 as far as success of its participants and record sales and downloads and all that. It's amazing. People who ended up third or fourth that I'm like, who? And they're selling records. It's crazy. There's a girl on there now from New Albany, Indiana, that's in the top 20 or whatever. She may not make it out of the next round. I don't know, but it's just wild to see that stuff. I'm like going, whoa, it's crazy. But Mike acknowledged his was Days of Our Lives. But I remember my mom watching that when I was growing up.
Honestly, there's a couple
of the Days of Our Lives.
Yes. First of all, I have acknowledged this publicly before when there was the
scoop, people.
When there was the big brouhaha about the Chiefs and the Dolphins, I think it was the NFL playoff game being Peacock only. So I wrote an article for the Sporting News about the 10 reasons you should get Peacock, like why it's good, Premier League, a few other things. A great show that they have on there that they need another season of soon called Poker Face. That's terrific. And I acknowledge that Days of Our Lives. Now they moved Days of Our Lives from the network only to Peacock. So the only way you can watch Days is if you're on Peacock. And my wife started watching it during the pandemic, and gradually I got sucked in. There was a character named Gabby, who's not on the show now, but that was a draw for me. I'll just leave it at that. And so I started watching it, and now we watch it every weekday. Every now and then, if we're on a long car trip, we'll listen to the audio, put it through the car player or whatever, and listen to the audio. It's not something you have to have your attention riveted to while it's on. Like if you were watching, I don't know, let's say Breaking Bad or something, you wouldn't watch Breaking Bad in the same fashion as she and I watch Days of Our Lives, but that is our TV vice.
There you go. So now you know the rest of the story. Good day. Let's see. With the WNBA draft happened. Shocker. Caitlin Clark drafted #1 to the Indiana Fever. No surprise there. Someone mentioned earlier they were surprised at the amount of people that showed up at Gamebridge for the draft just to see her drafted. But it's
why would anybody be surprised now?
It's real. I mean, Caitlin Clark fever is real. I mean, she's reaching a different audience. There's an audience that wasn't being served, I guess, and now they feel recognized and they're enjoying it.
Oh, I mean, I think the way she has handled her celebrity, for someone who's 22 years old, it's really astonishing. I mean, she has handled it masterfully. And that includes her appearance on Saturday Night Live. Did you get to? If you haven't seen that, you should be able to find a clip on Twitter or YouTube or something. If you don't want to fish all the way, although it is an excellent episode, or Peacock, it is an excellent episode. But if you only want to see Kate and how she appeared, she was fantastic. I mean, she has just handled every aspect of this spectacularly. Now, the hard part really comes. Because now she's going to be playing in the WNBA against great players and probably more than a few who are inclined to say, hey, Rook, you think you're great? Watch this. I'm sure she'll deal with that. But like no one reasonably is expecting her to come out and be the MVP her rookie year.
But I do think there is going to be quite a bit of that. Hey, Rook.
Oh, yeah.
For you, Diana Taurasi, set the stage for that already with reality is coming.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. I love that quote because I then looked up. Okay, so what did Diana Taurasi do as a rookie? She averaged 17 points a game and was third in the MVP voting. So you know what really she was saying when she said that? She's not as good as me. And maybe she's not. But I found that, a little less than magnanimous in her saying that. Because that's what she was really saying. Everybody thinks she's so great. She's not as good as I am or was. That's what Diana Taurasi was saying. I guess there's, some people think that athletes need to do that. Like Michael Jordan laughing at the iPad thing. That was kind of her Michael Jordan laughing at the iPad moment. I don't know that you need to do that, especially with an athlete that you haven't faced yet. And frankly, this is the next element of this. Another element of this is they may be teammates in a few months. It's 100 days, according to my watching the Today Show. 101 days today, 100 days tomorrow to the start of the Summer Olympics. And I believe that Caitlin Clark will be a part of the USA women's basketball team.
But that's also, I think it's good for the game because it creates, I'm not comparing it to the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson thing. You need that because that's my question about the women's college game. All right. The numbers were up, the views and this, but somebody has to be there. And actually some bodies have to be there to continue that. There has to be another Angel Reese, another Caitlin Clark. Now I'm not saying the same talent level, whatever, but you've got to have that combustibility that provides that drama.
Well, that's where Juju Watkins comes in. She's the next one. She had a phenomenal freshman year at USC, but they got all the way to the Elite Eight, I believe, or the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. She had a phenomenal year. She's a terrific player. She put up Caitlin-like numbers her freshman year, and she's already been in multiple commercials as well. So her brand is bigger now than Caitlin's was as a freshman. Remember, Caitlin played in empty gyms as a freshman because of the COVID pandemic. But I think that she is taking advantage of two things. One, the doors that have been opened by Caitlin and Angel. She's taking advantage of that, as well as taking advantage of the name, image, and likeness opportunities that were not available in 2020, 2021 for Caitlin and Angel. Caitlin in particular, they weren't there because the rules had yet to be liberalized in the way that they are now.
Turning our attention now to Kentucky. Kentucky undergoing a massive change that I don't want to say no one saw coming. I didn't see coming this soon. I'll just say that. I knew that Calipari wasn't going to be there much longer because the Indiana-Kentucky series is set to begin here in another year or so. And I knew that there was a reason that the last game in that series was the one that's going to be at Assembly Hall. So I knew that for a fact that he would not be coaching Kentucky at that game because he had vowed to never go back there. And I'm like, it's far enough away that he won't still be there. I thought maybe he would have retired or moved into a different role, but no, he found a different challenge. Wisely, he found the chicken man, baby, who's got the money, and another program that wants to go back to the days of Nola Richardson and 40 minutes of hell and success that they had once upon a time in basketball. And the SEC itself as a conference, they've seen Auburn and Tennessee and Alabama grow up in basketball. It's not Kentucky anymore. And right now, Kentucky is, I don't want to say they're not in shambles. They're never going to be in shambles, but they're in an unknown territory. They've got a new coach who people are at a wait and see attitude at. He's losing players, some through the portal. DJ Wagner, who was, the most acclaimed player coming out of high school and of his deal. So it's Boogie Fland, another guy that Indiana and other teams were chasing. So it's Kentucky is in uncharted territory for them, I'll say.
One thing I tried to that I've tried to say, and I wrote about this in the column that predicted that Mark Pope would be the number one candidate for the job, by the way, a column for which I was widely excoriated by Kentucky fans and some in the Kentucky media. One of the things that some programs at that level have failed to understand is that this new era we've just discussed at the start of my appearance, being a blue blood is still an advantage. It still helps, but it's not the gap that used to exist. The gap between Carolina and, I don't know, let me use Virginia is not what it was 15, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. The gap between Kentucky and Alabama is not what it was 10 years ago. The gap between UCLA and USC is not what it was 10 years ago. It helps to be one of those teams. It unquestionably does. But there's a couple of things that we still have to work through. Is there ever going to be a time again when being the first choice of the 5-star is a huge advantage? I can't say, for two reasons. One, we still have to get ourselves through the time of the fifth-year player, the COVID year player. We still have to get ourselves through that to see what kind of reset there is. And there also is the idea of what we will call the NIL player, the player who would have just basically thrown his career onto the rocks 5 years ago and said, I'm not making any money except cost of attendance now, which is $6,000 a year tops. I'm not making any money at basketball now. If I go to the NBA draft now, even though they're not going to take me, maybe I can play in the G League. Maybe I can play in the Philippines. I'll make some money. That player doesn't have to throw his career on the rocks anymore and hope they wash onto shore. They can now say, hey, I can go into the portal and I can get paid to transfer to wherever, good old State U, and make $300,000, $400,000. I can do that now because I have value where I am. And that player has helped make successful teams of late. We saw it with each of UConn's last two championship teams. They weren't entirely constructed of transfers, but they did have significant transfer components as part of their rotation. And we certainly saw that with, again, Purdue, not entirely constructed or even mostly constructed with transfers, but they're not in the championship game without Lance Jones. I mean, that's just not happening. And then you look to other programs that are even more fungible than, say, UConn or Purdue, like NC State, which was largely made up of transfers. And there they are in the Final Four. So the idea that Kentucky can get the best 5-star guys, it still puts you in the game, but it doesn't put you over the top in the way that it did, let's say, 2017, when De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, and Bam Adebayo had Kentucky one shot or one stop away from another Final Four. It's different now. And there has to be an acknowledgement of that. And maybe, again, when the COVID players finish, the last class of that is this coming basketball season. There will be some stragglers because of injuries and such, but they won't be season defining. There may be one player who's a season defining player, but as a class, they will not be season defining. Over the course of the last 2-3 years, they have been season defining because they've been able to play a fifth year, and the gap between the freshman and the senior is larger than it's ever been in the history of college athletics.
Mike, I hate when I ask this, but if you have the time to stick around for another segment, great. If you don't, I understand. Because there's just so much. I'm like, gosh, dang it! There's so much more I could ask him.
Hey, let's do one more. Sure.
Appreciate you
I
very
have another
much.
point to make on that anyway, and then we'll get to the rest.
Perfect. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. Make sure you're giving him a follow on the Sporting News. We've got more coming up here, brought to you by Autograph app. Make sure you go there, download that Autograph. We're real fans, get unreal rewards. Just download the link and add ISB Media. We're back with more Mike DeCourcy right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Yeah, I wanted Purdue. Woody's getting tons of mileage out of Trace Jackson Davis. His success this year, he's starting in the NBA.
What a shock to us, right?
Oh boy, I'm the one that says mea culpa, mea culpa. I didn't think that he would have success like that.
Wasn't I on here telling everybody he was going to be a good pro?
That's why you are on that side and I am on this side. I always
he's
tell
not
people,
afraid to take the heat for the reward later on.
I'm not afraid to take the heat.
He was going to start. I didn't know he was going to start, but I knew he was going to be a good pro. You can't. The things he was good at all translated. The things he wasn't good at or hadn't proven to be good at, I still thought weren't necessarily beyond his reach. I'm still not convinced he might not one day make a few threes. But
I think it was Todd's on with us on Mondays, and he said that, hey, don't be surprised that Karl Malone didn't start off with a 17-foot jump shot, and
neither did Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing didn't either.
So but when you're at that level and you're around that every day, and you have that coaching, you have that's your job to work on a 17-foot jump shot, not to go to chemistry class. It's to do this. So.
Right.
Mike, I made a bet with a UK friend of mine. It was the day that Mark Pope became the favorite, but it wasn't news at that point. It was around 11 in the morning. And I said, if Mark Pope is UK's coach, you buy me dinner. And he was in the Billy Donovan camp. He said I'd buy him dinner. So I was like, I'll definitely take that bet. So he owes me dinner.
I tried to tell people that, that was the interesting thing about the column that I wrote, which was, oh, you think you're getting Billy Donovan? You're not getting Billy Donovan. You think Danny Hurley's coming? It's not going to happen. He's not going to walk away from 2 titles. I thought the one that they had the best chance at was Scott Drew, because I knew he would connect with Mitch Barnhart. More than anything, I knew he would connect with Mitch. But 2 things. One, Mitch may not be that much longer just because of age. He might not work that much longer. And 2, man, the dumbest thing to do in sports is to walk away from a relatively fresh championship. Because you're still dining on that. And literally and figuratively dining on that, definitely within the period we are now. It's 3 years. He's still dining on that.
And the pressure is still less than
that's what I mean. Yes. And the pressure at Baylor, right? That's part of it as well. You not only you're at Baylor, but you also
coming back,
that
Mike. Sorry, more details.
Yep.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, and that means Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News joining us, brought to you by Freethink Apparel and Promotions. Whether you need 24 T-shirts for your upcoming family reunion or 200 for this season's recreational softball league, think Freethink Apparel. Just go to freethinkapparel.com today and get printing. Man, there is so much to talk about, and this is busier than when the tournament was going on almost, because there's so many different directions that continue to go with players moving about. Indiana, there's Trace Jackson Davis has been getting a lot of love from his teammates, talking about his development, and then he has continued to give accolades to Mike Woodson, which has to be a gigantic help to Mike Woodson and Indiana. But it's showing. It's on the court. He's succeeding. He's starting, and he's not starting on a last place team either. He's starting on a dynasty type team. He's been able to use his great athletic ability to expand his game a little bit and work right in to a role with the Warriors, and they love him.
I will say this. I've loved Trace from the first time I saw him. I have a friend who was a scout, and when I saw Trace at Peach Jam, so I don't remember what year that would have been, maybe 18 or 19, whatever his last year at Peach Jam was, I saw him, and I immediately texted my friend, and I said, Trace is going to have a better career than Romeo. I knew it right away. There were things he did that you could see. His passing ability at that level, at that time, was really significant. The way he worked around the post, he just had an understanding of the game. And of course, I covered his career for both the Sporting News and Big Ten Network for his entire time at IU. And I watched him grow and develop as a player. His growth in the ability to pass the ball out of double teams, that became a phenomenal skill. His growth as a defender is probably as much a part of why he is now playing as much for the Warriors as he does. I've loved everything about Trace's game. I've always tried to make sure that he got the recognition he deserved. I remember I talked to him at Media Day prior to the 2023 season, the Big Ten Media Day, and wrote a column about, look, at the end of the day, Trace is going to be top 3 at IU in points, rebounds, and blocks. And at that point, and I think there's still nobody other than Trace. He's the only player in IU history to be top 3 in points, rebounds, and blocks. Think about the players that encompasses. I mean, the astonishing talent: Scott May, Kent Benson, all through the years, Jared Jeffries, so many great players that could not or did not finish top 3 in those 3 categories. And Trace has that distinction. He's a phenomenal player. And I'm so happy to see him succeeding in the NBA. I knew he would be a good pick. It bothered me that teams punted on first round picks when they could have had him. I thought that he was someone you absolutely 100% wanted on your team. I'd have to go back and look at the end of the first round last year and see some of the bad picks that were made ahead of him. But there are some, I guarantee it.
Let's see. Speaking of that, Zach Edey he's going to have to make his transfer to the NBA, a very, very different player than Trace Jackson Davis as far as mobility. And not to say that he can't develop a shot at some point, which I'm not saying he has to right now, but his situation's a little different. He's not having the same type of mobility that, say, Trace Jackson Davis, not a shot blocker. How is he going to be, do you think? How is his transformation going to be?
I will say this. First of all, I absolutely think he can play in the league at the very minimum. Look at how much money TJ McConnell is making right now. And look at how valuable he has been to the Pacers. And basically what TJ does is play a quarter and a half a game, ballpark, unless somebody's hurt. If they are whole, he's a quarter and a half a game. Now, he's a very valuable player in that quarter and a half a game. He can change a game because of his ability to get deep, because of his control of the game. He's terrific. But even if Zach's time in the league is only spent as that second quarter player, I still think he can be a game changer in that second quarter. And that's maybe worst case scenario. I guess, at least in my mind, in terms of ability, I think that's his worst case scenario, that he would be a second quarter player. I don't think he's a guy that you stick at the end of the bench and never let in a game. I don't think that's going to be who he is. I don't believe that's even his worst case scenario. I think that a good coach is going to find a way to use him at minimum as a change of pace second quarter player. I don't know how many people who don't follow the NBA understand that because you're playing 48 minutes and because you're playing 82 games, basically every team, except in the biggest games when we get into the playoffs, takes all their regulars out, starts the second quarter with their whole second unit, and plays most of that period with the second unit. Not always. I mean, they're going to sub some guys back in and all that sort of thing, but that's how the NBA has worked for as long as I've followed it. That you get that's the way you do it. So I think that he can do that. One of the interesting things about the conversation around Zach is that what I see done is that people go to the gloomiest projections of Zach's draft stock and use that as, how come he's only this? Well, maybe they're not right. I've been following Jonathan Gavoni's work for 20 years, maybe. He started out Draft Express. He was an independent. He worked really hard to build up his brand. And he got really connected to the league. And then enough so that when Adrian Wojnarowski went to ESPN to build up a basketball vertical, he took John along as their draft expert. And John has had Zach as a borderline lottery pick, somewhere in that range, since I think early January, I'm going to say. And I just don't believe that John came up with that on his own. Not that he's not a smart basketball guy, but to take a leap that far, you have to have been told by certain people in the league that there is real interest in someone selecting him. John could look at the top 10 guys and put them in a pretty good order. He knows the game. But in order to take because Zach had been dismissed a year ago by the NBA as a junior, now I don't think you're for us. And then he goes back and he completely retrains his body. Jim, I don't think I've ever seen a big guy with the stamina he has. Certainly not a supersized big guy. I mean, he played 40 minutes in the NC State game. He played more than 39 minutes in the Tennessee game. I think he was out for like 22 seconds of game time in that Tennessee game and produced 41 points and did a meager 20 and 12 in a 60-point game in the NC State game. I mean, that staggeringly good stuff from a guy his size. And that's all part of how much work he did on his body between junior player of the year, Naismith, Wooden, Oscar Robertson, Sporting News, etc., and senior year. Wait, aren't you supposed to just say, well, look, I'm already the best. I'm good. No, he said, I'm already the best, but I want to be a pro. And I think he's going to be one.
And speaking of Purdue, now they have to replace that, whether they're 25 to 30% of their offense that he provided. And not just that, but rebounding and everything. Everything kind of went through Zach Edey, even though you have their guards coming back for a third straight year. But there was some, when you have Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton leave now, which that has not had, that's a new thing for Purdue. But they have 6 freshmen coming in, and that's not how Matt Painter has really not built his program on playing all these freshmen at the same time. So I'm wondering what they're going to do to make this leap from without Zach Edey and having so many new players coming in at the same time.
Well, I mean, first of all, don't forget, you return Trey Kaufman-Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, and Braden Smith, 3 starters. That's a lot. You return Miles Colvin, who is going to be a terrific player before his career is up.
Cam Heiden's the one that stands out to me too.
I think he's going to be outstanding. I was pleased to see how much run he got in the Big Ten and NCAA tournament. I would have liked to have seen it come earlier because I think that he might have been able to help more. But hey, Matt got into the championship game. He's the one he's the one that won 500 games. He understood what Miles's growth track was. Camden Heidi. I mean, think about it. I don't know exactly how they get those two guys on the floor at the same time because they both basically play the same position. But those times, let's say when each of those two is in, one at one wing, one at the other, and Fletcher is taking a break. You've got the most dynamic Purdue team we've seen since when? I can't remember a Purdue team that had two wings like those two guys. I mean, they've had great wings. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't have had great players. I'm talking about two guys that can go get the quarter off the top of the backboard. And what you can do with that in terms of offense and defense, especially defense, when you have guys that are that dynamic. So I think they have, and I really like, I really like Will Berg. I hadn't seen him much this year. But I was at the field house at Gainbridge for the second round game against Utah State when they were winning by so many points that the reserves played, I don't know, maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes because it just didn't make sense to expose Zach and Braden and that group to any injury possibility when you were already trucked into the Sweet 16. So I got a chance to see much more of Will Berg in that than I expected. I really liked him. I mean, that guy, for a big guy, he has as pretty a shot, a distance shot, as any big guy I've ever seen. I mean, any guy 7 foot or taller, he has as pretty a shot as any I've seen. Now, is a long way from being a pretty shooter to being a Big Ten center. But it's at least an interesting place to start. You can do things with that you couldn't do with Zach. You can invert your offense. You can stretch defenses. If he shoots that, he shoots a pretty ball. Obviously, it's different to shoot in games when you're playing to try to win and teams are trying to stop you. It's different. But when you're, an open shot is an open shot. That's why one of the first things I look at, Jim, when I see a guy transfer from the Southern Conference to the Big Ten or from the Southland Conference to the Big 12 or whatever, the first thing I look at, if they're a perimeter player, is what their three-point shooting percentage was. That's what I want to know because I know that's translating because an open shot is an open shot. And now guys might be a little bit more harried in particular games and because the defense is better, et cetera, but an open shot is an open shot. If you can make it in the gym, and you can make it in the Southland Conference, you can make it in the Big Ten. And that translates. If you're a big guy, you want to see, does he rebound and block shots? And that's because rebounding translates as well. And that's so I think that Will Berg will help Purdue next year. I'm really curious to see how they look, but I'm not predicting a huge drop off in my way too early top 25. I had a lot of speculative picks. Every one of us who does that has to speculate. I didn't feel putting Purdue in the top 10 was all that speculative. I felt pretty good about that one.
We'll certainly find out, Mike. I can't thank you enough for staying an extra segment for us today. There's so much to talk about, man. I greatly appreciate you as always. What's up next for you? Besides unpacking.
Yes. Unpacking the boxes that are behind me. Going to put out at some point this week a grading the coaches column, not grading the hires column, I should say. Who did well in the coaching transfer portal, so to speak.
Besides the packing and unpacking stuff, what's the first thing you're going to do in Pittsburgh?
Well, actually, we're going to the museum on Saturday. That's going to be our first outing. My wife saw this. I can't remember who's on display. I think it's some kind of impressionist exhibit, and so we're going to go do that.
Looking forward to it, man. Thank you so much, sir. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks,
Mike
John.
DeCourcy from the Sporting News. Make sure you give him a follow. He is up to date on what is happening in the world of college basketball. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Ugly Grouper down on beautiful Anna Maria Island, Florida. If you're down in the area, and if you're not, you're going to be heading that way, the Ugly Grouper has much more than just unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Maria Island, Florida. Tell them we sent you. Just go to theuglygrouper.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly Ooh, it's gotten warm.
I haven't heard from Chronic, but he usually pops in pretty early if he's going to be on. So it wouldn't surprise me if he just forgot to tell us something. Let me make sure I didn't miss an email from him. All right. I sent him a message just in case maybe he got busy and didn't realize what time it was, but we'll see. Here we go.
HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. I hope you're enjoying the warmer weather. It is definitely that. It is gone from a little chilly to quite warm. You can even feel a little humidity in the air. Lots going on in the world of basketball. Portal action for the main part. WNBA draft happened. The Indiana Fever, as would have been shocking if they wouldn't. How funny would that have been if they'd been Caitlin Clark becomes the newest member of the WNBA with the number 1 pick by the Fever. She will be playing in Indianapolis. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes, but not really, because we kind of know what to expect there. And that's going to be a boost. Another check in Indianapolis specifically, and they're another feather in their cap for something that they can be promoting and have going on, whether it's the Pacers, the Fever. I mentioned, Miller Kopp, part of the G League championship, former Indiana player. So, and 6 former Indiana players in heading towards the NBA playoffs. So, there's just so much going on. It's nuts. Still a busy time. And then once we get through April, which we've got the Indiana football spring game coming up on the 18th. I think Purdue has already had their spring game. 2 weeks after that, you've got the Kentucky Derby that happens. The Derby week begins the 29th of April. And then, but of course, the 22nd, what is the 20th, John? They have Thunder over Louisville down there?
Yeah, it's this weekend.
So you got all the fireworks going off on Saturday, the North America's largest fireworks display happening. If you haven't been to it, it's quite the affair. And then a couple of weeks after the Derby, you've got the Indy 500. It's the month of May at Indianapolis. And so it's nonstop AAU basketball rolling on. Going to make sure to try to get some of these potential players that Indiana are looking at for the future. Guys like Braylon Mullins and Trent Sisley and Malachi Moreno, Desmond Briscoe playing for Indiana Elite. Both had all of them had a good weekend. That squad went 4-0 in Iowa, playing against 4 different teams. And Braylon Mullins with a game high 29 points in one of the last game, I believe, their last win, averaged 20 points a game for his outing. And then you've got, of course, Malachi Moreno is a 7-footer who is he's going to be a wanted man as well, but he's out of Kentucky. So it's going to be interesting. That would be very interesting to see Indiana land them. I saw someone mention any truth that a package deal for those guys. You know, that's always just because they play together in AAU. It's always a good thought, and I'm sure it's something that they talk about. Hey, man, how cool would that be? But things just don't always work out that way because of a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't always have space. Number two, you don't maybe not have the playing room that one of the guys wants coming back because there's somebody that is starting or whatever the case may be. Jason, yeah, thank you. Mike DeCourcy is a great guest. He is very, very knowledgeable, and we're fortunate to have him very much. Yeah, a lot of people talk about things that are done deals for players coming to Indiana and whatnot. Nothing is ever a done deal until it's a done deal. So I'm not saying that you can't get excited about whatever you want to get excited about, but do realize one thing, especially nowadays, nothing is a done deal until it's a done deal. So we'll see how everything else turns out, especially when you follow something up with that's the rumor. That's why they're called rumors and not facts. But not saying that things aren't going to happen, that things aren't going to be that way. But Brian pointing out he is starting to focus on the Indianapolis 500. It is only 40 days away. It's true. It's here. The month of May begins here in just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. So, and like I said, you've got the Kentucky Derby, a lot of sports action. We're so fortunate to live where if you do live in this, whether it's a central Indiana, southern Indiana, to live in that area because of all that goes on. First of all, you've got Indianapolis, and which we know how there's so much that happens there nonstop. Then we've got the great basketball, whether it's Indiana, you're talking about Louisville, Kentucky, Purdue. So very fortunate in that regard. Down in Louisville, you've got the Derby. You've got the PGA that owns Valhalla and has major events there frequently. So very, very fortunate to be in this area. And it's always something going on. So we'll see. Lots of people chipping in on the Andy Moore Honda hotline with players that they think are going here or going there. Fred pointing out that Zed Key from Ohio State going to Dayton. But let's see who Russell said it's about to get real. Well, it's already real. It's about to get. Indiana still has what did we decide, John? 4 or 5 spots left. They've only filled the one. No,
if they land Ballo and Carlisle, which obviously those are just projections right now, but if we
that's 3 more spots yet.
If they land those, then Indiana should have 3 more open scholarships to fill.
Yeah, and that's the spot where you want to find the Lance Joneses of the world. The guys that aren't being promoted as the next thing, because that they turn out to be the next thing, but not everybody knew that or chasing them. Those are the hidden gems. And for those spots, if you can find those hidden gems for those spots, that is what's going to make your team better.
Yeah, and I feel like most of those guys will more than likely come from the mid-major route. There'll be guys looking to step up into the Power 5 ranks, or I guess it will be the Power 4 at this point. But there'll be plenty of players who are looking to improve their status by joining a team like Indiana or similar to Indiana. And hopefully Mike Woodson will pursue those guys this year. Because I think one of the biggest flaws from last season was that he left that open scholarship, and we saw what happened with the injuries, and he needs to take advantage of the opportunity to find some of these mid-major guys.
Without question, it is you cannot have any empties. You need guys that you need guys in practice that are going to challenge each other. I mean, Todd Leary talks about it all the time, but think about the talent that was on the team that he played on. How deep that was. You needed those guys playing against each other, not some ragtag group. You have to push. A team has to be pushed and to get better. And I think that's someplace that Indiana has lacked because their depth has been not very deep. So therefore you can't push other players if you don't have that. If you've got a Trace Jackson Davis going against a Race Thompson, that's different. Race is going to give him all he wants and push him. And that's what makes guys better. So can Indiana fill those spots, whether if they're able to get Kane and Carlisle and Umar Ballo, the other 3 spots, that's a chunk. That's 3 guys you have to go out and fill. And the NIL is not going to be an issue because even though those first 3 guys are going to probably take a nice chunk without question. So we'll see. Not sure what Heath is saying here at IU depth chart.
He's talking about the quarterback situation.
You're talking football. Man, you guys are changing subjects on me. Yeah, they do. Now that's a room that has depth, is Indiana football and their quarterback.
That's going to be fun to see play out, I feel like. I do think it's probably, at least at this point in time, a given that Curtis Rourke will be the starter for Indiana football moving forward. But whoever that number 2 guy is going to be very intriguing, whether it's Taven Jackson, if he takes a step forward, or if it's one of the new guys, Alberto Mendoza, who I believe is not on campus yet, or Tyler Cherry, the 2 freshmen.
Alberto Mendoza.
What was his? I know he had a brother who had a nickname, and you gave him a different.
I called him the Cuban Missile, and I forget what his brother's nickname was.
Something Cannon. Something Cannon. Was it the Cuban Cannon?
The Cuban Cannon.
Cuban Missile.
Yeah, I think it was the Cuban Cannon, and I called it the Cuban Missile.
Yes, so that'll be exciting. I mean, I tell you what, I wish I could be up there on Thursday for the spring game. I've never been a big spring game guy, but there's something about
because Indiana spring games have not been all that entertaining.
Well, not even that with the Indiana branding, but with spring games in general. I mean, it's really barely a game. I mean, it's a glorified scrimmage practice with a little bit of extra oomph for the fans, I guess. But I tell you one thing I wish that college football would do instead of the spring game, and I don't think this would ever happen. But imagine if they eliminated the ability for you to play FCS opponents in the regular season, but instead in the spring, you replace the spring game with an opponent with an FCS or, with an FCS opponent for an actual game. And maybe it doesn't have to be a full game, but you can see your team play against another opponent in a scrimmage exhibition type scenario instead of seeing them play themselves. Again, it's something that will probably never happen, but I think it's one way you could improve not only the regular season schedule for college football by eliminating playing the pointless FCS opponents that really do nothing for, I mean, they give you a free win, I guess, but it would add more oomph to the spring season, I feel like.
Absolutely. Brian, mentioning back to basketball, Cade Tyson as a potential look for Indiana. This guy is a guard from Belmont, but he is a 6'7" guard that averaged over 16 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, and shot 50% from the field. But more importantly, as Brian points out, he shot 45% from behind the stripe in his second year. So and 85% from the stripe, 45% behind the arc, rather. That's a Lance Jones, but better. Those are some great numbers. And if you got that guy coming off the bench, holy crap, that is a good addition. We'll see if there's any truth to Indiana's pursuit, how serious that is. He's just a sophomore. So those are the kinds of guys that are not being listed everywhere, but there are just tons of guys out there that can really make the difference in your team. Cam Heide, a perfect example. That guy's got talent, and if he's not starting next year, I'm going to be really surprised for Purdue. Good. He provided them some. You want to talk about athletic, man. I remember there was a follow-up dunk that he had in one of the games, and it's like, where the hell did he come from? So he's one of those types, and so this could be that guy, Cade Tyson. But when guys similar to that. And having a 6'7" guard, man, that's great because Indiana's rebounding was very, very poor last year overall as a team. They did not rebound the ball well. We know that they shot the ball horribly from the free throw line. So adding guys that shoot the free throws at this type of rate, just like the same with Miles Rice from Washington State, also a very good free throw shooter. So those are great ads for a team. So there's that. You're right, Brian. And getting back to football, talking about the Cuban Missile, he will not arrive until the fall. So we'll see that. Man, it's just been a busy, busy day, and it's going to continue to be busy as we talked about Umar Ballo finishing up his visit here. I think he goes from Bloomington to Louisville for a visit.
That is correct.
But
do we think and maybe you're about to get into this, sorry to interrupt, but do you think there's a chance he commits before he gets to Louisville if he is that much of a sure thing for Indiana?
There is absolutely a chance. Didn't we have that happen or see that happen last year?
It was with Mackenzie Mbako.
Bam. Yes. I don't know, how if he's being guided by, someone in his camp or a parent, or if he's doing it himself. And if he gets an offer, something that a couple of things Indiana has going for it is the fact that we mentioned the fact that they're going to be playing in the battle for Atlantis, which would aid him in his NIL. I don't want to say problem, but opportunities because of how that has to work with visa students, but also the love that Mike Woodson is getting from Trace Jackson Davis and the success that Trace Jackson Davis is having in the NBA right now. Where does Umar Ballo want to wind up after college? Of course, he wants to be in the NBA. So that is something that Indiana already has going for it. Louisville doesn't, because they've got a new coach who is unknown to Ballo for the most part, unknown to a lot of people. And Kelsey,
he's going to have to create his own identity with Louisville.
He hasn't, I don't know if he's put anybody in the NBA yet, but
the one thing that Louisville, and for at least based on Pat Kelsey, his coaching background, and really you could say the same for Mark Pope with Kentucky. Both College of Charleston and BYU were number 2 and number 3 last year in 3-point attempts. The only team ahead of them was North Florida. So if you're going to focus your game on the 3-point shot, which again, that's kind of where college basketball is heading, maybe that's not something Omar Ballo would want to flirt with the Cardinals, but who knows?
And you mentioned it earlier, Umar Ballo, the number 1 pick available in the transfer portal right now. And for Indiana to land that does more than just fill a position. It sends a message. It sends a message to other people, like it's Kanan Carlisle, who I think reposted or posted something on social media once he committed. And I think he was in his IU gear when he did that. So that looked to be a good sign.
Yeah.
If that's something you're looking at.
Someone else would also be back-to-back seasons where Mike Woodson gets, if he were to land Ballo, he would have landed the number 1 transfer portal player this year, unless someone else jumps and that's considered higher. And last year he got the number 2 player in the portal with Khalil Ware, Hunter Dickinson being the only player in the portal rated above him last year. So Woodson kind of showing that, I would say, part of his philosophy, if you will, maybe that's not the right word, is to find guys in the portal more so than freshmen. And I know that angers a lot of people, and he probably should prioritize at least freshmen a little bit more than he does. But in this, I guess with someone who is coming from the NBA and they're used to this free agency style of recruiting, even though that's not what it's called in the NBA, it's not recruiting. It's the closest thing that you have to it in college basketball, the transfer portal.
Yeah, some names that are still available, which I'll be honest with you, some of these are a little surprising. The number 2 availability player, John L. Davis, originally from up in the region. All of our listeners on WJOB know that name probably. But with Florida Atlantic, kind of would have thought he would have followed Dusty May to Michigan. And the fact that he's still available, I guess that means that that's not quite the case. 6'4" shooting guard. I don't know if that's something that would fit into what Indiana's doing with the guys that they're already deep into talks with, but he was a great player. He helped lead that team to the Final Four. He was AAC Player of the Year. And that was after helped lead FAU to the Final Four. He averaged over 18 points a game, shot 41% from behind the arc, and goes for 35-9 against Umar Ballo in Arizona. So it's surprising for me to see him still there.
I see someone in the comments, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it wouldn't surprise me because this school has had this issue before. But apparently John L. Davis may have some academic issues, which that prevented Caleb Love from going from North Carolina to Michigan last year.
That would not. That's a very good point. And as soon as you start to say, I'm like, oh, yeah. Michigan, a little tougher to get into academically. AJ Storr still on the board, 6'7" shooting guard. Of course, you know him more recently from Wisconsin. He started out at St. John's, was at Wisconsin for 1 year. He broke his hand, or he had a breakout, had a second team All Big Ten season, averaging 17 points a game, 4 boards, and really played well in the Big Ten tournament. Surprised that he's still on the board, a 6'7" shooting guard. Man, I
do see that he is projected to go to Brad Underwood in Illinois. I don't know if he's waiting to take a visit there first, but that could be something that I guess to keep an eye on with him.
Tucker DeVries, another shooting guard from Drake, is sitting out there, but it looks like he's committed to West Virginia. Great Osobor from Utah State. He's a power forward. That's one of those positions that Indiana needs to fill as a backup. How about Robbie Avila, Larry Nerd, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the 6'10" sophomore center from Indiana State? Most people thought he was going to be following former Sycamores coach Josh Schertz to St. Louis, but why that? If that's the case, why has that not happened yet? Little misunderstanding. Cliff Omori, 6'11" center from Rutgers, backup. Indiana's going to need a backup regardless. So there's so many guys that are still out there. Kanan Carlisle, of course, listed, the 6'3" guard, freshman from Stanford. That's another thing. Indiana, at least the guys they're getting are younger. So not a bad deal. We've got to take a break. Lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll get to your comments and whatever else pops up. Brought to you by our good friends from Hoosier Hanks East. Ooh, I need to get over there today, as a matter of fact. It's been a minute. I love their salads, but of course they have their great pizza, especially Jim's Starting Five. It is, this thing is amazing. It's a thin crust with a garlic butter blended into it a little bit. Pepperoni, mushrooms, sausage, onions, and banana peppers. That's my starting five, but you can have your own starting five over at Hoosier Hanks East, located right off of College Mall Road. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right. So is there really something on the menu that's called Jim's Starting Five?
Yeah, it's not officially on the menu yet because they haven't remade them. But if you ask for Jim's Starting Five, they know what it is.
That's pretty cool, though, if they actually had it on there.
But you can also have your own starting five. Doesn't have to be as perfect and as good as mine. How about Adu Thero from Kentucky?
I saw he was at least reached out by Indiana. I don't know if he I'm not sure that he would be much of a contributor, to be honest. I don't know how much he did for Kentucky. He wasn't one of their best contributors, but maybe
but see, you're not going to get people's best once.
And that's true. I keep forgetting you don't really need the best all the time, especially with these final three guys.
The better you can get, you're better off with the better you can get, obviously. But you're not going to get.
Thierry would probably be a good backup to Mackenzie Mbako, honestly. He'd be somebody good for him to come in for, or even Bryson Tucker, one of those two. If Tucker ends up being starter worthy, which I'm assuming he will be.
Terrence Edwards Jr. committed to Louisville.
I think that was a few weeks ago.
Andrei Stojakovic, wasn't he an IU recruit at one time?
That name does not ring a bell, but it very well could have been.
Peja Stojakovic's son. He was a McDonald's All-American in 2023. I think that that seems like I remember that.
How much time we got? Chronic. Yes, Chronic had something he was pulled into last minute.
Yeah, I've kind of figured.
It's usually the case with him because he normally lets me know when he's got something else going on if it's unrelated to work. All right, here we go.
Hog steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, and it has been a basketball-filled Tuesday, of course, with so much going on with the portal. Another name that we were talking about, guys that are still available. How about Dre Davis, 6'6" shooting guard from Seton Hall, who helped lead them to the NIT title. Of course, Dre Davis from Indianapolis. Louisville transfer, averaged 15 points and 6 rebounds last season for the Pirates at Seton Hall as they won the NIT, like I said. And if you don't think guys can come from anywhere, Kansas lands a guy named Zeke Mayo, 6'4" guard. He's a junior. He came from the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. So talent is everywhere. And so where they come from, not relevant. They whether it's development, whether it's growing into the body, whatever the case may be, it's just they're everywhere. Illinois gets a commitment from Kylan Boswell, a 6'2" point guard, sophomore from Arizona. Man, things are bleeding at Arizona. That would be 2 starters.
I believe Arizona's got some financial issues that they've been dealing with for at least the past year, and I don't know how much of that affects their NIL, but I would assume
if attorney bills from the FBI investigation still.
I'm assuming if that is the case, the financial issues are as bad as they seem, then that likely affects some of their NIL contributions as well. So that would be my guess as to why Arizona is bleeding.
I mentioned John L. Davis, the formerly from Gary, that played for FAU, that's still in the portal. But as is Vladislav Golden, the 7'1" center from FAU, who I also thought would follow Dusty May to Michigan, but I don't know if that's the same situation as that we talked about earlier, or if Dusty is just going a completely different way. Who knows? But there's another name that I'm surprised to still see available, but he's one that's maybe just checking out the market yet. So Malik Mack from Harvard, a name that sounds familiar, 20 points a game through his first 10 games of the season before he got sidelined with mononucleosis. He still ended up averaging 17 points and 5 assists on the season, winning the Ivy League Rookie of the Year last year. So there are so many names out here.
Whatever happened to our boy Fiddler on the Roof, Frankie Fiddler? Did he drop off of Indiana's radar?
You know, I don't see him. He's not on this list that I'm looking at currently. This is an overall list. It's not like an IU or Purdue list or anything like that. But these are just what are projected to be the top available transfers out there. Sliding in at number 45, Ryan Conwell. Sophomore.
And that could be somebody could fill one of those off the bench roles or even work his way into a starting
I
position.
just like his numbers are outstanding. 40% of his perimeter shots went down. He averaged over 16 points and 6 rebounds a game. That that's another one. If you have that on the roster in addition to the other names that we've talked about, that's filling out a deep roster. Speaking of Fiddler on the Roof, Frankie Fiddler from Omaha, 2-time All-League selection. He's still available to my knowledge. We'll see how that lands up, but
one more name from the mid-major ranks that we've mentioned before, not in a few days though. Leland Walker, former in-state player from Eastern Kentucky, averages 15 or at least averaged 15 points a game last year. Could be another great addition for somebody coming off the bench, come in, score a few points.
Here's a Richard Pitino had a great year with New Mexico, and part of that was Jamal Mashburn Jr. If you remember Jamal Mashburn, the former Kentucky great, he's got a son. He has a son, 6'2" shooting guard. He's a senior. He is claimed it lists him as one of the best pure shooters in the country. He was first team All Mountain West, led the league in scoring in 2023, but his percentage and numbers dropped this past season. Why that happened, we don't know, but he's got it. So Louisville losing Brandon Huntley Hatfield to North Carolina State. Another Kansas pickup. They pick up Riley Kugel from Florida Gators. So it's just so much going on. Whew. It is definitely hard to keep up with it all.
Transfer portal chaos, as we mentioned.
Make sure you go to thehoosier.com, and they've got constant updates going on, whether it's on the main page or in the boards. So, but yeah, Conwell did graduate from Pike High School. I think that they have spoken with him, but I don't know where that is. Fred, thank you very much. We appreciate you. It's hard to keep up with all this stuff going on. And the funny thing is, we finish, and then who knows what's going to change afterwards, but we'll have all that for you tomorrow. And getting prepped for Indiana's football spring game coming up on Thursday. After the game, we'll put together a post game type of show, maybe with Shannon Griffith, and have that ready for you. There's Fozon. He's sending in some NIL money from Amon Jordan. See how that goes. Cannot thank everybody enough on the program today. Mike DeCourcy, of course, for joining us and sticking around for a little bit longer. And each and every one of you, without you, we have no reason to be here, and we're grateful for you. We're back tomorrow to catch you up all again, as this is going a mile a minute. Thanks to John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.